Welcome to another episode of the Launch Notes podcast. I'm Blake from Launch Notes. Really excited for our guest today. We've got Des Traynor, who is the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Intercom. Certainly a iconic company, a startup that's, if you're in B2B SaaS, it's a household name by now. I've used it at a ton of companies. Incredible product, incredible company. Really excited to dive in with Des today. Thanks for being on the show, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake. Excited to be here.
So before we get into product talk, maybe can you help sort of just like set the stage? As a lot of folks are familiar with Intercom, ton of customers out there, ourselves included, but maybe can you set the stage a little bit on just sort of like this scale you all are at right now and kind of like where the company's at?
Sure. Loads of ways to answer this. So we're now about let's start off. We were 4 people in 2011 with 0 customers. Fast forward 12 years. And we are maybe 850, 900 people across 5 offices. We have about 25,000 customers who collectively have about 500 million conversations with their customers every month. Intercom powers all that. Revenue wise, I can't even remember our most recent public revenue figure. I think it might be either, maybe it's like that we're above 150 million or whatever in revenue, but whatever it is, it's way out of date. And what else is interesting? We have been increasing the trajectory of product releases over the last couple of years. Combination of growing the R&D team, getting more focused, really dialing in our focus on customer support, customer service. So we've been doing a lot of work in that space, trying to reimagine what we consider to be a somewhat tired category or a category that seemed to have found its some sort of equilibrium. And we're trying to push it to bring it to a new world, a world where support is automation first, a human in the loop world where support can be proactive and reactive. Support can be conversational first, and all of that can happen on one platform. So we've been doing a lot of product thinking and work on our messenger, on everything from automation through to say GPT and all of that revolution, along with proactive support and kind of ushering in that new era of customer support. So that's really what we've been focused on over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe it's a good time to get into some of this because I did want to talk about it. I mean, you all are, I think, a really excellent case study in just kind of starting on a very specific thing from a product perspective and then kind of broadening the portfolio and sort of broadening the aperture over time and, kind of adding now there's a whole sort of family of functionality. And myself and others might be familiar with, early days of Intercom. I remember you did the, it was the chat functionality on the website. You could put chat on your marketing site, help docs, stuff like that. And then I've had experiences recently. I'm not in a role where I'm as hands-on with your product every day these days, but seeing now the full sort of spectrum of product functionality you all have, it's been awesome to sort of watch that journey over the years. I know this is something a lot of companies wrestle with and struggle with, but what's been sort of any kind of guiding principles or big learnings as you kind of had that product journey over the years?
I think the very, very short summary of Intercom is we sell multiple things today, but we didn't start out with that intention. We started out with a very sort of simple idea, but slightly abstract, which was let internet businesses talk to their customers and let their customers talk to the business.
Yeah.
And to do that while they're using their product. That was where our first intention really was, and it was motivated by the fact that so much of business to customer communication is ineffective because it's out of context by email or whatever. And we thought hey, wouldn't it be great to do it inside the product? And similarly, so much of in 2011, the state of the art for help desks was you go to help.launchnotes.io and you'd have an entirely different experience. It would look nothing and feel nothing not like the actual product. And we thought, wouldn't it be better if you actually be in the product, saying the thing you wanted to say? So that's kind of that was where we started. Practically, what happened along the way was we saw that there was 3 different use cases very clearly emerged. People wanted to do it on their websites to have contextual chats with prospects. People wanted to do it inside their product to nudge people to use certain things. And then right after you sign up, the first thing we'd like you to do is blah. And then people wanted to provide that support. So we ended up kind of offering the product in 3 different areas. And so it wasn't it wasn't the case that we expanded our product offering that way. It was more we repackaged our product offering to be purchasable in 3 different ways. And then I think when it came to then actually expanding, I think a lot of startups I talk to have this question of when do we add our second product, or how do we know when to stop adding features, or how do we know when we're done, or what is product market fit, or some flavor of that. And because they've read some blog post somewhere on the internet that says, don't build your second product until you have product market fit with your first product, which is smart. So I guess the way what I've learned over the years is one, it's an abstract concept. So you need to get a decent definition of product market fit. And what I really consider product market fit to be is like there's a large amount of people with a similar use case choosing to use your product for a specific thing and using it as frequently as you'd expect them to. And they're getting a proper solution to their problem. And generally speaking, that should get you to a point where you are like either the terminal victor, as in like you're the final, you're clearly the person who's going to emerge as the number one player. You might not currently be the number one player, but everyone is switching to you or wants to switch to you or will once you have such and such a feature, so you want to be in that sort of like terminal victor sort of place. Or there are some areas like, let's say like project management or something like that, where like there's just not going to be one winner. Like there's too many different ethos or like Gestos spouting around between like Basecamp and Monday and Smartsheet and Asana and Linear and Heist and Cycle, and they're all nice products, but they have different opinions. And what you'll get, I think, is a convergence on some sort of oligopoly. Like there'll be like 7, 8, 9 different players, each representing a different kind of church, if you like, of project management or something like that. And your job, if you're entering that category, is to be the player number 8, 9, 10, 11, who captures enough of the market that's going. I think, again, you're in product market fit if everyone who is thinking like you is ultimately going to end up adopting your tool. So I think the first mistake I see startups make, and I invest in startups and talk to other startups too, and so I see this quite a bit. Like one is just like they don't get to that point, but they're already building products number 2, 3, 4. And I think that often happens when product managers get excited. Just they it's one thing a challenge product managers have is that because they oftentimes don't actually understand engineering or even detailed design or whatever. I'm not saying they all don't, but some of them genuinely don't because they just haven't bumped into it in their career. Especially if you start in a larger company, you might have been quite isolated from the edge team or whatever. The gap between having an idea and getting the idea built is quite big. So a lot of people float around saying, "Oh, I'm such a great product manager. I've got so many brilliant ideas for products." Like that's not the job. The job isn't ideation. We all have ideas. It's like really choosing where to invest resources, not just for the build, as in like, let's get this thing built because, it'll be cool then, but also for like the running cost and the maintenance and making sure that like, hey, we're going to stand up all these features in this new use case and we're going to maintain it and we're going to improve it so that it itself will become the terminal victor in its space, which means it requires this ongoing investment. And they make the decision to do all that because they had the idea. And why wouldn't we work on it? But I think the danger there is, if you're not already if you're not already sitting on a success that's definitely like locked in, and you start trying to like add on another product on top, you're diluting the chances of your primary product becoming a success in the first place. And I think that's like one lesson I was just seeing. Like a lot of folks will be like, "Oh, Intercom split its product up or like built more products early on, so we should do the same." It's actually, I just like it's a mistake to interpret that. Like we actually built the primary product and then repackaged it and then looked at what could we add on to that. And then when you are adding on, I think the other like common mistake is like, be careful. Like if you decide to add on a new product that is in for a new buyer or in a new space or whatever, you're not just, you're getting nearly no kind of like shared cost base because you have to attract a new audience. So your LTV CAC is just as weak as it was because you have a new marketing campaign. You can't sell 2 products at one marketing campaign. So you really are always looking for adjacencies. You're looking for the same buyer ideally, or you're looking for a buyer who's very tightly connected. So the person who, maybe customer support and customer success might share a lot of workflow. So I think you could actually hop from one to the other. It's harder to jump from say like engineering to finance or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I think like picking your next product is an important piece too. You really want to have some sort of multiplicative benefits, i.e. you can share campaigns, you can share marketing costs, customer acquisition costs, ideally share a lot of common workflows within the product as well. So that's kind of like, if the question was really about like scaling and evolving a product over time, they're the areas I see go wrong. People do it prematurely, or even if they don't do it prematurely, they pick a product where like there's not enough of a multiplicative benefit. Like you don't get to share enough resources, and as such, you may as well just start 2 different startups.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious how you all thought about this, but I think a lot of fear for folks if they do go into this, like, hey, we're going to add another product, and maybe they do feel like they have, they are the terminal victor in the sort of their sort of first SKU.
Yeah.
there's a fear like, hey, if this other product doesn't work, is it going to just bleed us dry and be a resource drain for years
Hmm.
and years and years? And really a pattern of smart companies is they're very good at shutting down. Like Google gets a lot of flack for this. They'll shut products down, but it beats the
Absolutely.
alternative, like bleeding the
Yeah.
company dry to,
Yeah.
force a product that doesn't have fit. How have you all thought about that? Do you give it a timeline, or are there certain milestones you need to hit, or how do you think about like how much room to give a new product?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different pieces to this, and it kind of depends on the stage of company you're at. I think as a company matures, your ability to just throw shit out there and see what sticks, a la lean startup or whatever, is
Mm,
kind of degrades because you're actually doing brand damage. Like
for sure.
If Apple say they're going to launch a headset and it's a bag of shit, it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very bad for Apple's brand. It's very, very bad, right? Their whole brand is
Yeah.
built on like consistent attention to detail or whatever. Similarly,
Mhm.
if we roll out something that does the exact opposite or like is nowhere near as well designed as anything else we've done, like it hurts our reputation. So I think when you're later on, I think your criteria for actually launching has to be pretty high. And what that means is not only do you sweat the details, but it means that you're going to do a lot of betas. You're going to have features like we have a launch coming out in like 12 days. It's been a beta for quite a while. We've launched, it's actually, no, it's 6 days. We have something that's been live for a subset of customers for about 5 months, and it's actually going live in 6 days, Jan 25, I think, or 27. And the reason it's in beta for that long is because we can't risk rolling it out and then having to roll it back. And then rolling it back is always messy because if you're doing anything sort of real work, even if it's a
Mhm.
bad product, like 4 or 5% of your user base is going to start depending on its existence. And that makes it really hard to claw back, which means you're ultimately going to have to maintain it, which means you're kind of you're watering a dead plant. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
it's not useful. So your criteria for launch, you have to really believe that you have to have a lot of reasons to believe that this new product will consume a lot of consumer workflow. People are like, shit, if we're going to use Intercom for that, we should use it for surveys too. Like
mm,
it has to kind of play out like that where your confidence is high because it's just
mm,
hard to undo. However, for the startups who are listening who are like earlier, it's actually a lot more risk free. You can we certainly in the early days, we throw features out and then roll them back within 6 weeks. If we thought like, hey, this doesn't scale, it's too expensive to maintain, it doesn't seem to do anything, no one seems to care. Like it's very easy to control those things. And like that's probably the right approach earlier on. Certainly
mm,
I don't think any early stage startup should be like doing a lot of like prolonged betas unless it's for their overall thesis. Because then
mhm,
I understand why products like Superhuman or Rewind.ai or whatever have spent a long time in beta. It makes sense in those cases. But like if you're just trying to beta one new feature, I would say ship it and see what happens because you probably just don't have enough users to get any real strong sense out of a 10-person beta. So
mhm,
that's kind of how I think about it. But like I will say like it's a muscle you need to have pretty warm, the ability to delete or end of life a feature.
mm,
If you don't, like if that's not like a thing people are comfortable saying in your company, or that's not something that anyone knows how to do. Like there's an art to sunsetting a feature. You turn it off for new customers, then you communicate EOL to like existing users, and you suggest alternatives, and you build the integration so they can switch to an alternative. Like it's a thing you have to do.
mm,
But if that's not something a business is willing to or able to do, then you have to believe that you've adopted the posture of a business that makes no mistake. And like
yeah.
that's true,
Yeah.
but then that you have to pay that off in a different way, which is really long betas, really high certainty for release, which ultimately slows the company down. But that might be your brand, so that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was at Atlassian, we had a foray into competing with Slack, and we had
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
A Slack competitor called Stride that we were
yeah, yeah.
going into with gusto, and I was really impressed. Like we did ultimately shut that down and that project, and I was really impressed with the way our leadership just communicated it, handled that moment like very elegantly, and it
Yeah.
was, on paper, you could chalk it up as a loss or a failure, but it just really struck me as like a sign of a high quality organization. The way that they weren't just willing to do that, but the care they took into doing that, I think is, like
100%.
you're saying, important.
They did like the Slack investment at the time. Like the whole
Yeah,
package was like
yeah,
really nicely put together. They
hmm
celebrated the effort. They celebrated the uniqueness of the Stride product. And then they gave their customers clearer communication as to how to switch and why to switch and where they're switching. And then they partnered with Slack on the switch. Like it was a grade A execution.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%. just to give some folks some sense of the scale for the product org at Intercom today, roughly how many folks are in the product org? How many product managers
Sure.
today?
Well, so all of R&D, so design, product engineering is about 400 people, let's say.
Okay,
And I'd say there's about 110 who are non-engineering. So that
sure.
would be product design, product research, and research analytics and data science as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're, I
With
mean, the other way I've answered that is like, we're like 22 user facing product teams. Each would have an
okay.
EM, PM, a designer, and roughly 5 engineers.
Okay, great, great. So if someone's obviously everyone there has an important job and a huge job in terms of managing and overseeing that whole department or organization. What do you look for in terms of like someone who's going to run an entire product org and kind of own that function and then kind of communicate and work with you? What is kind of top qualities you would look for in someone to do that? And what are you kind of trying to sniff out if say you were to interview someone for that role or advise a company looking for someone in that role?
There's a few sort of criteria that will sound like table stakes. So I'll try to put some actually specificity to them. One is like just for Intercom anyway, like just general product taste. So
Mm-hmm.
what I really mean by that is like, it's important that you're like signing up for really high end software regularly, observing the interaction patterns, observing the decisions they've made, thinking about why that works for them, tying that into a strategy. So like, a question like, what do you think of linear and do you think it will kill Jira? Is a really actually
Mm-hmm.
eye-opening question. Can you see the strengths? Could you make a case as to why it will? Can you make a strong case as to why it won't? If you were the CEO of Linear, what would you do to change course to maximize success, whatever? But like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that comes from like, can you identify like, because there's a lot behind that, like, is linear even the right question here? Should I be talking about Monday.com or whatever? Like,
Right, right.
but like there's a lot to how somebody perceives the market and how, because you're kind of dialing through, like you're threading a lot of needles. Like, do they have a sense of like aesthetic or product taste? Can they identify good
Mm-hmm.
execution when they see it? Do they understand trends? Do they understand zeitgeists? Do they also understand like the dynamics of business? Like sometimes the best product doesn't win, and
Mm-hmm.
like, so you're kind of asking a load of those questions, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's genuinely an area I probe on a lot. Is just like, how do you see the world and how often do you refresh your worldview and how informed is it and how holistic is it? Right. You'll find a lot of like turned PM people literally think the most beautiful thing will win. And a lot of engineer turned PM people will think the best engineer or the fastest thing will win or whatever. And a lot of like MBA turned like PM people will think the smartest idea will win as opposed to the
Mm-hmm.
best or like the best executed or whatever. So it's, you really
Yeah.
try to look for like, and like everyone brings biases, like, to the party. And that's my bias is design. I fall for well-designed products all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of it, but like, I don't know if I do enough about it. But like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
understanding that is a really important trait, because I really think like a great, all, all org charts are in some sense recursive, right? Like, and I often say like a phrase I use internally a lot is quality is fractal. Like if you look at any single piece, you can assume it should embody pieces of the master. So I'll put it another way. If the director of product doesn't have great taste, it's ridiculous to assume the PM will, because they won't even get rewarded if they did. So they'll turn it down. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a recursive nature to these traits. The second one that I care a lot about, like, is two related, but I'll call them out separately. Bias for impact. So like, great product folks see where the things that need doing are and focus on doing them. And they just have a really good nose for what actually matters. And I think partially because they know their customers so well, they've built up a lot of intuition, partially because of their own motivation. They only want to matter. They want like to spend their hours on areas of high impact. They would
Mm-hmm.
not be comfortable, redesigning, even if it's a really good redesign, and refactoring an entire like, settings page or preferences screen that was
Yeah.
already working fine, but it just offended your sensibilities. They
Yeah.
only care about impact. And
Yeah.
it's just like, there are people I've worked with before who have like the most innate sense of like, they'd look at all the activities in the robot and be like, there. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll pick out the one thing that they believe really, really, really matters. And they'll just pour their life force into that, or their work life force. And it'll matter a lot because of it. And you don't
Yeah.
realize, or like, what you work on is at least as big as an input as how hard you work and how well you work and how good you are and all that. You can choose
Mm-hmm.
really dead end products or really dead end use cases or workflows and empty the tank on them and literally produce nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
So bias for impact, they're just great people. They just see what matters, like,
Yeah.
and then the last thing I'd just say is like speed, and speed matters to me. Um, so the bias for impact thing, just to net it out, because of course everyone, these things it's often like saying like, and has a good sense of humor, because everyone thinks they have a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I really mean when I say bias for impact is they're happy walking over hot messes of batshit product because they know that ultimately that doesn't matter. Because if we don't get this other thing right, nothing matters. And if we do get this other thing right, nothing else matters anyway. They can distill a product down to its actual essence and nail it. So that's the bias for impact. And then the bias for speed to me, and this is an area where where I bump into a lot of folks who I would say would not pass this test. Speed of impact and speed in general is literally the defining nature of a startup. A startup is a business designed to grow fast. And if you are going to go into business like raising venture capital or anything like that, you need to actually work out pretty quickly, is this thing going to work at all? Which means you need to very quickly work through ideas and see what's sticking and what's not, etc. And I think speed is innate. Now, this is like, of course, this means working hard, right? Like, it kind of annoys me that every 3 weeks, the entire Twitter sphere decides to have another debate of should one work hard or not. So I'm not going to go down that corridor. It's a stupid and pointless debate. However, what I would say is when I talk about speed, really what I mean is when a PM sits down to like decide how the team works or how they plan or how they document or anything like that, are they focused entirely on what makes this team as fast as possible? So do they remove every bit of bullshit they can out of a process? And that's for me, it's like a hard requirement. PMs love documents. They love fancy deliverables, especially if they're ex-consultant PMs. They love polishing deliverables. That are meaningless that customers never see and are absolutely irrelevant. They love processes and flowcharts and matrix days and all that sort of stuff that sometimes is a massive speed up and sometimes it doesn't matter at all. And it can be a massive speed up when you see a PM say, I see that the team is struggling to consistently prioritize which bugs we need to fix and when. So I've built this little thing inside Coda or Notion or whatever. What it does is it ingests every single issue from GitHub. It tags every single customer is affected. It looks at the ARR of the affected customers. It adds it all up and it lets them prioritize either by revenue or by frequency. But now we shouldn't spend as much time deciding what we're going to do. And you're like, right, that's a PM using their documentation superpower in this case to speed the team up, right? There's another version of that where you're scarring on a cuff, which is like, hey team, we're going to have a half day offsite where we're going to produce a manifesto as to how we prioritize and triage bugs. And you're like, right. And next thing, now like every single time a bug comes onto the team, there's like a 7-step flow chart that somebody has to go through. That's how you slow a team down. In both cases, the person thinks they're doing great work. And in some cases, the person with the 7-step flowchart might actually be more correct, depending on the company, depending on the org, depending on the release cycle or whatever. But for me, I like biasing for speed is just really important. Like what speeds the team up, and like there's other aspects of that. Like, do they appreciate that a quick decision will often beat a great decision? Do they fundamentally accept that like fast gets good quicker than good ever gets fast? So you can have a good thing moving slowly and it'll get outpaced by a bad thing moving quickly. Because when you're moving quickly, you're moving, you're improving, and you will just constantly, you'll always beat if you're iterating fast, and you're taking on board real market feedback.
Yeah. Once someone's in that position, what are the most effective ways you've seen folks, I guess, in terms of kind of be that conduit between, you, the rest of the leadership team, the board, everyone has opinion about product. So it's not like someone gets the keys to the product kingdom and they can just go off and do whatever they want. There's folks above them that they need to align with. And then obviously the whole product org that they're managing. So you're kind of a conduit between those two worlds. What are the best ways you've seen great product leaders kind of communicate up to leadership, work with, the C-suite, stuff like that?
Yeah. I'm a fan of aligning on a vision and having a pretty concrete but short vision. Like I don't like 25-page docs or whatever. It's about like, if you want to say like, we're going to win in support by investing in the following 3 areas, we will have the best automation, the best proactive support, and the best messenger or something like that. And you can define what best means, and you can say, you can get a little bit more specific where you need to, but basically you can align with like a CEO or even a board on a statement like that. You can say, this is exactly what the hell we're doing. We're not doing anything else.
Yeah.
And then you can take that to your team and you can say, right, this is the alignment point. We have degree of freedom beneath this. So we can decide exactly what these features look like, how they render, how we prioritize them, whatever. But that's the that's the connective tissue between us and the company strategy. And we don't get to deviate from it, but we do get to like add to it. And I think that's like the best way of doing it. And like what that does is, like the bigger piece of work up front to align on what exactly are the ingredients, like to constantly like understand and redistill exactly what it is you're trying to do to be as like complete but short as possible. But
Hmm.
once you have it, like you can move pretty fast from that point onwards, and then it's a case of just, hey, we're all going this way. And then like, let's all think and talk in this manner. Let's plan in this manner. Let's like build product in this manner. I think that's like ultimately for me, like how you align an org. I think the anti-pattern to me is like case by case alignment. Oftentimes
Hmm.
that's happening. What you're seeing is like, there's a broken trust case somewhere where someone's like, sure, I like this week's project, but check in with me before next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the times when that type of interrogation is useful, but it would often be like you're trying to measure something else, which is like, are you moving fast enough, or do you need more resources? Do you need more headcount, or what, do you need one of the decisions unblocked? The times when that level of interrogation makes sense, but I just think in general, can you align on a shared vision? If you can't, you're
Hmm.
going to be going back to the well every week for like strategy on top. You know what I mean? Which is not
Yeah.
a useful way to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask kind of quickly here. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I wanted to ask about a lot of the artificial intelligence stuff that's going on. I know I've heard some of your recent podcasts that you all are doing a lot of thinking and work around this. A lot of product managers, especially at SaaS companies, are kind of looking at this technology saying, okay, how can I incorporate this? How can I think about this? What do you think, either for you guys or for like other product folks out there? What are going to be the kind of hairy challenges about, just around this going forward? People want to take advantage of it. There's still a ton of unknowns and fast moving technology here. So what are kind of like the top things in mind as you all kind of look at this in terms of incorporating this into product and product strategy?
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of companies are like need to do is come up with a shared opinion on how big this change is that we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen companies try to like minimize it, try to downsize it. It's often not helped by like, if you're like a hardcore midware product and you're seeing the DALL-E demo, you're like, what the hell's that got to do with us? Right.
Right.
So I can kind of get why people might want to talk these things down. But when I, when I say like, how big is it? I mean, like on a scale of this is a new cool feature that most people are going to have by standard. Or is it like as big as mobile, or as big as Web 2, or as big as the cloud?
Yeah.
I think the challenge is before you can then decide what it means for our business. Let's say me and you have a project management business or an email
Mhm.
startup or something, just take it out of Intercom for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to first of all work out, do we think that there's been a tectonic shift in technology over the last 6 to 8 weeks or whatever, since November 30th or whatever, like ChatGPT went out. And I think there's valid reasons to poke holes. I'm personally of the opinion that this is close to as big a shift as we've seen since, like, I want to say mobile or Web 2 or any of that. Um,
Mhm.
I think there are, in a way that we did not see at all with Web 3, there are like concrete things that are now capable, now possible of doing in a browser in like split second time that were just literally not possible on November 28th or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and we're seeing this emerge. Like I use a note taking app called Reflect, and I can now right click and generate a summary. And that wasn't something I could do before. And that's something I now do.
Yeah.
So I think job one for any PM out there is they need to turn it out to whoever, like, if they're ultimately responsible for this decision, and say, yo, how big of bet are we thinking this is? Like, how big a bet do we want to make here?
Mhm.
The ground has clearly shifted between our feet a little bit. But like in the case of me and you having an email startup, we're like, all right, if we believe this is huge, then we need to work out what does that mean for our product space. And my quickest articulation of it is the following, right? Well, what's happened over the last while? Generative AI, large language models, ability to summarize, parse, augment, then on top of that, visual ability to create visuals from text descriptions through DALL-E, and unlocking all that creativity. And then lastly, like a Whisper AI for like real-time translation, even through the most thick and awkward accent like mine or whatever.
Mm.
Real-time transcription combined with all those other features means that, like, we're literally, it's not even speculative for me to say on this call in a future world, I could be talking about things. It could be getting transcribed, fed into DALL-E and generating visuals as I'm speaking. That sort of stuff is now possible. Similarly, I could start talking and it could finish my sentence for me. And it could even finish my sentence for me in my own damn voice. Because if you look at Volley from Microsoft or like Synthesia are doing, synthetic voices now is now out there as well. So a lot has changed. So the people I have no time for are the AI minimalists who are like, it's not that big a deal. We're going to be still dragging and dropping files around forevermore. It's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So we need to work out. So back to like Des and Blake's email startup, we need to work out how big a bet are we making here? And I would say we should assume input has changed. All forms of input has changed, where people will probably likely be in a position to talk to computers in a very direct way now. And the computers will be able to understand the intention of what they say. So it doesn't have to be restricted vocal commands. It can actually be like, you can give it a rough idea of what you're trying to do and it'll work it out. We should assume that type of thing has changed. That's not the most immediate or actionable change. We should assume that like anywhere people are writing text, that all of the undifferentiated boilerplate of text should fade away to nothing. Now, there's two ways that goes. So as in, dear Blake, I'm sorry I was late for showing up in your podcast, but I promised to be that, where actually I'm not expressing anything uniquely Des. All of that is just going to be like tab autocomplete style stuff from now on, right? I really think that's irreparable. And then the inverse of that is like, whenever you receive like a 9-paragraph pitch from somebody being like, our CEO knows a lot about launching, would love to hear on your podcast. And you're looking at this like 7-paragraph monstrosity of an email. We're like probably less than a year away from you assuming that you can see a little box somewhere that summarizes that entire email down to 2 bullets. Dude wants to speak on your podcast.
Yeah.
And then if you have a standard way of replying to say, no, go away, please, you can assume that you're not going to be hitting the or key and typing, hey there, much as I respect, blah, blah. Because again, that's all undifferentiated Blakeness. So we can just autocomplete all that. And like, this is just within the realm of an email tonight, right? So all of the inputs changed, all of the outputs changed, all the undifferentiated heavy lifting's going. Now, if we're sitting here today running an email business, now we need to work out, well, what can we ship today, right? We're probably too early for AI. It's not available. It's still a bit batshit. I don't think we're yet at a point where everyone's going to be talking to their computers. That could be a while away. We could definitely ship some lightweight features. Summarization is like ready. That's good to go today, right? And in fact, without giving anything away, if you're an Intercom customer listening to this, check in a mere few days and you'll see some dope shit dropping, right?
Yes.
Similarly, generative text, all that sort of stuff, that's all ready to go. That's pretty much good to go. Now, the only sort of flag I'd wave is it depends to some degree what area you work in. So the danger of the, say, generative LLM stuff, even when there's a human in the loop or whatever, is it can still get shit wrong. So like it can hallucinate. So to give you an example, if you ask it, hey, how do you reset an API key in Intercom? It'll say, oh, easy. You go to intercom.com/API/keys/reset and you enter your details and you hit send, which sounds like a really good answer. It's just totally wrong. It's not at all how you do it, right? This is what they call hallucinations, right? Where it says things that sound smart. It's like, it is genuinely the greatest bullshitter of all time, right? Like since Trump, like, and I think like that will cause problems. One of the $1 billion questions that we're facing right now is how trainable is all of this? And to what degree can we restrict its ability to just consume the entire internet? Can we say like, please read our docs and make them more important than what you found on Slashdot or Reddit or whatever, Like if we can actually coax it to refine its learning, then we can possibly train these models to be like very, 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 very high impact, in which case you could actually use it for critical features and functionality. Like for example, customer support. You could literally say from now on, like Riverside FM could say something like, read our docs, read our entire history of customer support conversations, speak like us, and only say things we've said before. And if you can refine it and scope it that way, you could be able to go very far. Now, I'd be remiss not to point out, like we built a product called Resolution Bot. It's been live for quite a while doing this. There are some differences in the generative AI stuff in that, like with something like Resolution Bot, you are pre-approving the answers because it turns out a lot of businesses care about the right answer going out the door and they actually care about the wording as well, right? They have brand to worry about, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's unclear yet if you can actually control the tone of voice of these things and the manner of speaking and all that. Like you can control it case by case, but can you say, I need you to speak like a hipster? All the time,
Yeah.
No, you can. Like there's a field called prompt engineering that's emerging, which will let you kind of control all these like blah, please do the following. type
Yeah.
things. A lot of these, how would you say, like a lot of these things have yet to be stitched together perfectly. But I think this podcast will genuinely be out of date in about 3 months' time. Everything I've just said,
Mm,
someone's going to listen back to and say, like, Des is so wrong. Because the
yeah.
world is moving that fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's like, so to net out, if you're a PM in a startup wondering about GPT or AI in general, I think you need to work out how big a bet are you willing to make? How big of a shift does the company think it is? And then I
Yeah.
think you need to look case by case, workflow by workflow, and work out, does generative AI make it faster, cheaper, or easier to do this? Does automation make it faster, cheaper, easier? Is there a faster, cheaper, easier way to take input from the user in this? Is there a higher order command that they can give us, such as close this project and mail everyone and tell them it's canceled? Right now that's 27 mouse clicks and 4 text inputs or whatever. But
Yeah.
in theory, that could just be a one-liner in a post GPT world. So you need to go through your entire workflow and work out, like, again, on the foundation of how big of a bet are we making, you then need to go through your most critical workflows and work out how can we augment this and make this faster, cheaper, easier, or more productive, whatever. And so that's how I'd go about it. It's a bit of a monologue, but that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you just invited yourself back onto the show in 3 months. So
Exactly.
we happily accept. We'll see you in, what would that be, April? But yeah, no, it's I'm going to go out on a limb and say, given the enthusiasm and depth of your response there, this is clearly, if you're working in product out there, this is clearly one of the top things that you should be thinking about. So
Absolutely.
it's great. It's great validation, because I know it is for a lot of product folks out there. It's one of the top things they're thinking about, and you provided some great insights on that. So appreciate it. And yeah, given that, we'll see you at we'll see you at round 2. We'll do a round 2 in a couple months and see where we are with all this. But appreciate the time today, Des. You guys are doing awesome stuff at Intercom, and this was really valuable for our audience. So really, really appreciate the insights and candor today. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Blake. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Take care.